Hey, what's poppin', y'all? It is your boy Guardy3, and welcome to the morning show, where, of course, I am joined by the real star of the morning show. I'm just a guest. He is Mo Better. How you doing, Mo?
Doing great, coming off a great night last night, having a blast talking wrestling. Here we are back again, doing a double, and I'm ready to get into it.
No, absolutely. So why don't we start with some pretty congratulations are in order. Oh, my bad. Why don't we start with some congratulations that are in order first, Mo? We had a couple of retirements. Of course, first one being Diana Taurasi is officially retired from the WNBA. So, wanted to start off the show, Mo, by throwing a little congratulations Diana's way. Fantastic career. First ballot Hall of Famer. For sure.
No question. Look, right now, she's got to be in the top 3 of greatest players to ever play in the WNBA, right? And if you just look at it from a basketball standpoint, her basketball career, her basketball resume, second to none. Dominant at the collegiate level, multiple national championships, player of the year, comes to the WNBA. I think she's a 10 or 11 time All Star, 10-time All WNBA, 3-time champion, 3-time Finals MVP. I could keep going on and on with the accolades. I think she's number 1 in scoring and assist, and I mean, she checks every box on any list as a basketball player. Prime peak Diana Taurasi is the best all around basketball player I've seen.
No, absolutely. That's fair enough, and of course, want to congratulate somebody from a different sport as well on a great career. Of course, I'm talking about Jason Peters. He also officially retired. So I also wanted to throw a shout out to Jason Peters, who I think, very well could have he has a real chance to get into Canton one day. Very good left tackle for a very long time, and can't ask for a better career if you're Jason Peters.
Dominant at his prime, definitely one of the best left tackles of the decade. I would say this: I do think he gets in. He maybe not first ballot, but I think Jason Peters will get into the Hall of Fame. He's had that type of career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, congratulations to Diana and Jason Peters on, just fantastic careers overall. But, Mo, I wanted to start off our first topic. We're going to, start a little NBA. We got somebody who is not a Jason Peters fan in the comment. Like I said, we want to start a little NBA, Mo. I find it interesting that the New York Knicks are struggling this year. And I know they're third in the West, or East, I mean. 37-20. They're having a great season so far. The real concern is against the top teams in the East. They fell to 0-7 with a loss versus the Boston Celtics. Mo, are you concerned right now with the New York Knicks and their performances against top-notch teams? Because we also got to remember the Cavaliers just walked into their house and dropped 142 on them just a couple days before that.
I think the Celtics walked in there and dropped a ton of points on them as well. Look, the Knicks are a good basketball team. I had them pegged as being a playoff contender. I don't think they're so. There's levels. They're not title contenders. They're not. They're entertaining when they're on. When they're in their rhythm, they're a very explosive offensive team. But what they're not, what New York is normally known for, especially if your coach is Tom Thibodeau, is being one of the better defensive teams. Is being one of those teams that outwork other teams, 50-50 balls, setting hard screens, going to the floor. That's what they're known for. That's how they kind of brought the Knicks back. Tom Thibodeau is a very good basketball coach. Everywhere he's gone, where franchises were struggling, he's built them back up. He's added to their culture, and his teams all play a certain way. And yet, I think there's a ceiling to the success you can have with Tom Thibodeau as your head coach. He's made the Knicks relevant again, which is very important because they weren't relevant for years. He's a big part of where they're at now. I think, though, like I said, there's a ceiling to how far he can take you. He can renovate, fix up, prop up your franchise, but he can't take you to the next level. And when you look at the Knicks, you look at Josh Hart, you look at Bridges and OG, who are all known for being great defensive players. They haven't consistently done that this season. And you have to when you know that your two leading scorers, Brunson and Towns, they're not good defenders. They're just not. Neither one of them. They could compete harder and be more competitive in that end, but they're not good defenders. So they need those other three guys playing at an elite level on that end of the floor, and they're not really holding up that end of the bargain. Also, if you play for Tom Thibodeau, you know this. If you're a starter, you're going to play 35 or more minutes. They don't go deep into the bench. They never do. Now, they don't have a very talented bench, but Thibodeau doesn't play his young players. If you want young players to get better, you know how to get better? They get better by experience, by getting down on the floor under fire. And that hasn't happened. I think this Knicks team is stagnant. They're not just 0 for 7. They're 0 for 7 against any good team. They don't beat good teams. They just don't. They don't beat good teams because they can't stop good teams. So I'm not concerned with them. I mean, in the bigger picture, they're right where I thought they would be. If you're asking me, do I think they're going to go on a deep playoff run? They're not. So I think Knicks fans are concerned, but even they would have to admit, if they're being honest, when you look at what Boston is, when you look at what Cleveland is, if the Knicks win a first-round series, that's great. I think their season ends in the second round.
Yeah. What's up, Key, Linda, Gene? Thank you for hopping in. Definitely appreciate it. I completely agree, and that's something that I think a lot of people are kind of missing with the Knicks because, when they're talking about defensively speaking, they all, the first instinct is, well, look how bad Cat is at protecting the rim, and they're like, that's true. But the idea of getting like Mikal Bridges, for example, was, you have enough perimeter talent around him to kind of make up for him and Brunson's deficiencies on defense. And honestly, I think my biggest disappointment on the Knicks isn't even Cat's defense, because we know that Karl Anthony Towns in a Tom Thibodeau scheme as like the main rim protector, it doesn't work very well. We've seen it before. But Mikal Bridges has been, I think at best, the way I can describe him, if I'm being nice, he's like a slightly negative defender. And when they traded 5 firsts for Mikal Bridges, I thought they thought they were getting something closer to that guy in Phoenix. The guy who was, in DPOY talks or somewhere close to that. Because I think that's the only way you justify trading 5 firsts for Mikal Bridges is if you think that you can find that two-way form again. And that just hasn't happened. I was watching a film on him against the Cavaliers, and I think a big problem is his screen navigation is like almost completely non-existent. His defense on screens is just get obliterated by the screen and hope the shooter misses the pull-up jumper. So if the Knicks want to make a real run, I think the first guy they got to look at, honestly, I think it's got to be Mikal Bridges and OG. They got to step up and just step up in a much more meaningful way in these games than they have.
I agree. You know what? You bring up a great point. It doesn't get talked about enough. What they gave up for Bridges is on par with what the Timberwolves gave up for Rudy Gobert, right? It's that kind of move. Like when you trade that many number 1 picks and pick swaps, you're supposed to be trading for somebody who's a franchise changer. And look, I like the Bridges trade because I thought we're going to get the guy who can give you 18 to 20 offensively, but be a lockdown defender on defense. And that hasn't happened. That hasn't come to fruition. And so I look at what they gave up for him. That's a lot. Like it's the kind of trade where down the road you're like, man, those picks that could have added to your franchise. That could have elevated your franchise. I'm not trying to put it all on Bridges because it's not all on him. but you make a move like that, you expect to get back bigger returns than they have to this point. And to be fair, this is year one with Bridges as a member of the Knicks, but I still expected more from him, and they haven't really gotten that. I expected more from OG. Josh Hart has been so much better offensively. I think he's forgotten his true identity as a defensive player, as an energy guy. He's kind of lost his identity. So, I just think the Knicks are a good team. But I think they have more questions when you look at that roster and who's on the bench than answers. And when people start saying things like, wait till they get Mitchell Robinson back, that you're not getting back Hakeem Olajuwon. You're getting back Mitchell Robinson. He can rim protect. He can get some rebounds, and he can be a lob threat. But late in games, I don't know if you want him on the floor because he can't make free throws. And I think he's a good defensive player. I don't think he's the kind of defensive player that he's going to take where they're ranked defensively, which I think is 20th, and they're going to certainly be a top 5 defense. I think anybody that thinks that is living in a fantasy world. The Knicks are a good basketball team. When Mitchell Robinson comes back, they're going to be a good basketball team. It's like that old football comment they used to make about former running back Leroy Horde, where it was like, if you need 1 yard from Leroy Horde, he'll give you 1 yard. If you need 3 yards from Leroy Horde, he'll give you 1 yard. I'm just saying, let's not go crazy over Mitchell Robinson.
With the way Knicks fans are talking about Mitchell Robinson, you'd think Prime Shaq is joining the team whenever he returns. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Suddenly they've made Mitchell Robinson to like, you don't realize once Mitchell Robinson comes back, look out East. Stop it. Stop it.
No, absolutely. Another report I did find interesting, Mo. Zion has lost some weight. He's down to 264, the lightest he's been since his rookie season. He's put on some strong performances lately. I guess my question is it all? Are you going to start buying some Zion stock soon, or do you need to see a longer stretch of dominance from him?
Oh no, I would have sold my stock a year ago, so I'm good. I don't care that they lost weight. I mean, he's back. They're still not a good basketball team. He hasn't impacted the team in a way where it's like, man, Zion's back and look at how they're playing. Not really. I feel about him the way I feel about Joel Embiid. The only difference is he's younger than Joel Embiid. By the way, makes for a better trade bait because he's that much younger. I don't think he's that guy. I know everybody's waiting for him to become that guy. The guy that he is, he's the guy that was supposed to be the guy that never becomes the guy. He's going to tease you just enough with a couple of great games, maybe a great week, and then he does just enough to break your heart. If you're into fantasy basketball and you're like, I got Zion, you're not going to have a good season. You're not going to do very well. He's not going to play enough games for it to matter. I just think that people keep waiting on him, and you're going to be waiting and waiting and waiting. No, I sold my stock. He's probably going to have a few more big games this season. Will it matter? Are the Pelicans going to be in the playoffs? No, they're not.
Honestly, at this point, Zion's career as the guy who, should have been the guy but never became the guy, in large part just due to injuries and inability to stay on the court. Is he just like a modern day Grant Hill in that regard? Because Grant Hill was supposed to be, next up, but then injuries kind of just derailed his career. I think there's some similarities in the narratives and just how everything's played out so far between Zion and someone like Grant Hill, honestly.
Yeah, but Grant Hill actually had a career. He was a 7-time All-Star. He actually had a career. He was a great player. We didn't go like, I don't know if Grant Hill's that good. Like, no, he was that good. He was that good. He was that dude. He was breaking Pippen's ankles, Jordan's ankles. Like, he was that dude. He was that good. An injury completely altered his career. That's different. Zion hasn't even had a career. Like, Grant Hill came out of college a great player, went right to the Pistons and established himself as a great player year one. Zion's never done that. A better comparison to Zion, even though I never thought this guy was going to be a great player, but a lot of people were high on him. Maybe more like Greg Oden, just always hurt. But I think Grant Hill actually had a career. Zion, all you've had from Zion is, I don't know, he might be. We knew what Grant Hill was. We wasn't surprised by him at all. Like, because of what he did in Detroit, even knowing that he was facing an ankle surgery, Orlando gave him a huge contract in free agency because they were going off of what they'd seen from Grant Hill. So I think their careers are completely different. I mean, like I said, Grant had a career. Zion's had a lot of promise and potential.
No, that's fair enough. No, absolutely. By the way, and I'm sure you were happy about this last night too. From the NBA side of things, we finally had the Luka revenge game. You know, Nico Harrison even showed up for it, which I think that was funny. By the way, Lakers fans chanting "Thank you, Nico" for half the game.
Yeah, that was
triple double, 19, 15, and 12 in a win. And I gotta say, Mo, watch out for the Lakers, man. This team is gelling. And I think, come playoff time, they are looking like that team, Mo, that could get hot at the right time. Like, I'm kind of already seeing it. They're gelling. The role players are stepping up. I think almost the biggest benefactor, it almost seems, of this trade just might be Jackson Hayes. He's all of a sudden looked like a starting caliber center, getting to play with multiple elite ball handlers at the same time. So I wanted to get your thought on the game last night, and in general, do you think the Lakers now could potentially make a deep playoff run if they, get hot at the right time?
The game was actually a fairly competitive game. So, I mean, Dallas was shorthanded, but they played well. Kyrie was Kyrie. He was terrific throughout the game. And it really wasn't until late in the game where LeBron kind of took over in the fourth quarter, but it was a competitive game. Look, I get it. People look at the box score and go, Luka had 19 and 11 or 15 and 11 or something like that. And it's a great box score. If you actually watch the game, though, he did well rebounding. He rebounded great, facilitating. He was terrific. He didn't shoot well. Like, you see the 19 points, but nobody talks about it. I think he took 20-something shots. He only made like 6 shots. Like, he didn't shoot well. He made 1 3. I think he was like 1 for 7 for 3. It was a revenge game, and I guess for Luka, it was just vindication, I guess, winning. But I'm sure he wanted to go for 38 or 40. And maybe he'll get a chance to do that when he goes to Dallas, but that game isn't until late in the season. And unless the Lakers are competing against another team for seeding, like Gene and I talked about the other day, I don't think Luka, unless they're competing for seeding or a spot, he's not going to play that game. LeBron's not going to play that game. Like, you're going to get a starting lineup of guys that you couldn't find in a police lineup. So I was excited for Luka. I'm happy for the Lakers to get the win because they've played well down this stretch. Overall, and on the Jackson Hayes things, I would calm down. I would say this: he's played well in short bursts. He's the kind of player, though, you don't want Jackson Hayes playing 30, 35 minutes. You don't want that. And remember, if you look at who the Lakers played over the breadth of this stretch, they only played one really good team, and it was the Nuggets. And to their credit, they own the Nuggets. But the Lakers have the third toughest schedule down the stretch. So I think you're going to get a better sample size of what LeBron and Luka can do as a tandem and what the reserves and the role players they have, like a Jackson Hayes, like a Finney Smith. Those guys are going to become more prominent down the stretch. So I think, to me, I know Laker fans are going crazy, and a lot of people are going like, I see finals. I think the Lakers have a puncher's chance to get to the conference finals. But the way the West is built, everything is about matchups. It really is about matchups. And I know they owned Denver the other day. I still don't think Denver's a good matchup for the Lakers in the postseason. So I think it really will come down to who they play in the first round, and what seed they're going to be ultimately. I don't think anybody could say outright, well, I think the Lakers are going to meet the Thunder in the conference finals. I'm not going to go that far. I think the Lakers have a puncher's chance to get to the conference finals, but in the bigger picture, they still have no rim protection, and they're one of the smaller teams now in the NBA. And I know you can say their defensive rating looks a lot better the last few weeks, but look at who they've played. Utah multiple times, the Hornets multiple. Like they and look, to their credit, they're beating teams that they should beat, and that I love that when you're supposed to beat a team and you beat them, that's how you do it. I don't want to get too crazy with what you see in a stat sheet or what some analytic geek tells you, because your eye test will tell you the Lakers are still not a good defensive team in the bigger picture. Against the better teams, they hide LeBron. Well, they can't hide LeBron now because they got to hide Luka. They got to hide Luka. And if Austin Reeves on the floor, they're going to hunt him. They've got three people in particular, Luka and Austin Reeves, who you can pick and choose who you're going to hunt. So I don't want to crown the Lakers. Let's see what they do going forward. I'm excited for the future. This year, I'd be happy if they get to the second round and won a second round series. But I'm not going to put money on that.
I do love how Luka only hit 1 3 last night, and it was a step back 3 over a double team. It was the easy threes he was missing, but when he had to hit the most ridiculous 3 all game, yeah, nothing but net, no problem. But
he was nervous. He was nervous. You could tell he was nervous. There was one time, Brett, he did a step back and he was all by himself. Air ball.
Yeah, that was a really fun game, but LeBron airballing a free throw late in the game too completely threw me off. I was not expecting that. At the end of the day, yeah, I completely agree. It was a fun game, but Luka didn't shoot necessarily all that well, but at the end of the day, they got that win. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens down the stretch. And we'll go ahead.
I was just going to say it's set up in the West. If you look at the Clippers, there was a time when the Clippers were the 4th seed. The Clippers are getting ready to drop down into the play-in. They're getting ready to drop down to they're making a huge drop into the 7th seed. So what's going to benefit teams like the Lakers, the Warriors, when we go for this push and seeding, is teams like the Clippers coming back to the pack. It's teams like the Rockets, who at one point were second in the West. And I think the Rockets are like 4th or 5th now. It's going to change down the stretch. And if you're in the West, which you don't want to do, you don't want to be in the play-in.
I watched my Bucks face the Rockets yesterday, and we had some of the worst fourth quarter execution ever. Needing a clutch, we're down 3 and we need a clutch 3, and Brook Lopez takes a 35-footer when we had 20 seconds left on the shot clock. Just wasn't great execution for us last night. But yeah, I completely agree. And it's kind of funny. I was asked Mo, because I was talking with some Warrior fans yesterday, and they asked, what's going to prevent them from making a deep playoff run? We got Jimmy, we got Draymond, clicking on all cylinders. Steph's picked up his play. And I'm curious what you think is gonna prevent the Warriors from making a deep run, because my answer was simple. If you're relying on Buddy Hield in the playoffs, I think that's a massive problem. So I'm curious, what do you think would prevent the Warriors from making a deep playoff run?
I think what's going to stop them from making a deep playoff run is that when you get in the playoffs, you got to beat really good teams 4 times. The Warriors aren't going to beat a fully healthy Dallas Mavericks 4 times. They're losing that series. They're not going to beat a healthy Lakers team. They're losing that series. They're not going to beat the Grizzlies. They're losing that series. They're not going to beat the Thunder. They're losing that series. What's going to stop them from making a deep playoff run is reality. They're not that good. It's great that Jimmy gave them this bump. But he's giving them a bump to get into the playoffs. He's not giving them the kind of bump where you're like, they're about to go to the finals. No, they're not. Not unless there's this massive rash of injuries like we've never seen before in the history of the West. Like down goes 10 or 15 stars. Then they got a shot. But if we're being realistic and not just caught up in the moment, the Jimmy Butler bump that everybody's calling it, I'm like, Jimmy always has a honeymoon period. That's the history of Jimmy Butler. They love him now. They're going to love him. But they're not going to go on a deep playoff run. They're not that good. I just reeled off a few teams they absolutely can't beat in a series. They can probably beat the Timberwolves in the series because the Timberwolves are kind of one-handed. But even then, I don't think that's a lock. I think that's a 7-game series. I like what Jimmy Butler does for them because he gives them a legit second scorer who's got an alpha mentality to take pressure off of Steph. He also gives them something they haven't had in years. He gives them a post presence on offense. I've said this for years about Jimmy Butler. One of the great things about him that goes unnoticed is even when he has a bad shooting night, he can generate offense because of his ability to get to the free throw line. And it helps Steph out. If you can get the opposing team in the penalty early, it kind of changes how aggressive they can be. Because if you foul Steph and he goes to the line, he's a great free throw shooter. You know what I mean? Like you foul Baczynski and some of those other guys, they're good free throw shooters. It helps their offense that way too. I'm telling you all the good things. He also helps you defensively because he can guard multiple positions. They're not. Yeah. I just don't think they're good enough to go on a deep playoff run. I think they would go on a deep playoff run if they were in the East until they met up against the Bucks or they met up against the Celtics or the Cavs. The top of the East is really, really good. The middle to the back, I think they're products of being in the East. So I love that Golden State is playing better. I want Steph to be in the playoffs. I'm always rooting for these great players to take one more shot at a deep playoff run. And I hope they're able to do it before it's all said and done. I just don't think it's going to happen this year. Like, look at Phoenix. We know they're not going on a deep playoff run because more than likely, they're not going to the playoffs at all. I don't want that for Steph, LeBron, or any other of the old guard. You want the old guard to make another stand, but I think reality catches up to everybody at some point. The idea that Golden State is going to go through that gauntlet in the West, when you can make a case that the Lakers might be the weakest of that gauntlet, and they can't beat the Lakers in a series. We got to be a little bit more realistic about what Golden State is and isn't.
No, that's fair enough. And yeah, the fact that Phoenix dropped 148 points yesterday and still couldn't get the win was very alarming. But no, that's fair enough. I think the Warriors have a very good, once we have front four there with, Steph, Dre, Butler, and, Looney, and I'd say even a guy like, Kuminga's really come on strong this year. But after that, it gets really dicey. And, Buddy Hield started out hot. He's gone cold. And once we start getting into names like Moses Moody, those are just guys you don't want playing in a playoff series for you. So, no, that's fair. I'm really interested to see how the West is going to shake out throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, look, I think in the West, you can honestly say this, that there are some lower seeds that can knock off some of the top seeds. I think that's absolutely true. So OKC is running away with the West record-wise. And everything about them, we've talked about this, says, barring injuries, if they're healthy, if they're whole, how do you stop OKC from winning the West? I'm there with anybody that puts that question out there. But sometimes you go on your gut feeling. And my gut feeling about OKC, I still don't think they're coming out the West. I don't think they're coming out the West. I don't know why. It obviously I have my own favorite team to root, but this isn't even about that. I'm just talking about them. I think they're currently right now, just like last year, I think they're built for the regular season. I do. I think they're built for the regular season. I know Shea's going to show up. I know he's going to do what he has to do. I don't know about the rest of them. I don't know about J-Dub. I don't know about Chet. I don't know. There's just a feeling there that I don't know if they've got that grind to them, if they got that thing in their chest that it's one thing to be a front runner. It's another thing to get into the playoffs and be hunted and have to play a team almost as good as you 4 times. I don't know. Because if they had it, they wouldn't have lost last year to the Mavs. Even then, they were the deeper, better team. That was before they added Hartenstein, before they added Alex Caruso. Like, everything says they're that much better now. And every metric will tell you there's no way OKC won't win the West. And yet, if you ask me OKC or the field, I'm taking the field.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I think with OKC, I think they have a J-Dub problem. And I kind of saw that against the Timberwolves. He's supposed to be the second all-star, the second option, the guy who steps up when, they start, locking in on Shea. But this is also a guy I just watched when they really needed some offense in overtime against the Wolves, not even get a shot attempt up. And he really was non-existent in the fourth. This is something I've mentioned on And One about J-Dub. Every time there's a pressure cooker of a game, I never see J-Dub step up, and I don't really see him half the time during these games. And it showed once again, Timberwolves, they need buckets down the stretch. Shea's going, doing his thing. Okay, where's J-Dub? That's what I can't figure out. So I think that if the Thunder want to, really win the West and make it out of the West, it's not Shea they got to look at. It's that next guy. They got to look at their second option. Jalen Williams just has to be better in these big games.
No, I agree with that, but I think Cottrell he nailed it. He knocked it out of the park. This is why I feel the way I feel, and that's not a knock on Shea. If you watch that game against the Timberwolves, and you watch most of OKC's game, most of their games, Brett, they beat the brakes off of most teams, right? But when you get them into a game where it's a one possession game and it's a physical game and it's grit and grind, I don't think that's their element. I don't think that's their element. I think I can't put my finger on it, but I think what Cottrell is talking about, maybe that's why I feel the way I feel, because I'm right there. As gifted a player as Shea is, he does it in a different way, but he does hunt for calls. And I'm just wondering in the postseason, when the refs swallow their whistles and they kind of allow a little bit more physicality, is he going to be holding up? Because I remember him putting his hands up in the air last year looking for calls. So again, great player. I'm not taking nothing away for anything he's done. And if you could just look at teams and rank the teams on paper, top to bottom, well, OKC would be in the finals against Boston. It would be that simple. And yet, like I said, anybody asks me, I'm taking the field.
No, and so that's fair enough when it comes to the NBA this year, just completely unpredictable. But Mo, I figure Shea's a bucket too. I love his play, but yeah, Mo, I see what you see.
Yeah.
Hey, fair enough, Cottrell. Thank you for joining us, by the way.
Appreciate
Definitely
you, man.
Love seeing you in here. I figure, Mo, why not talk a little NFL too? And we got, word last night from Adam Schefter that Anthony Richardson will be in a quarterback competition. We don't know who the quarterback he's going to be competing against is, but they've already announced they're bringing in competition for him. I'm curious, what do you think about kind of the Colts and just the state of Anthony Richardson in general?
To me, if he's not your guy, if you're not fully embraced the fact that he's your franchise quarterback, when you say we're going to bring in another guy for competition, and look, let's be honest, the guy that you're bringing in is probably going to be a veteran quarterback that's over 30, right? Maybe over 35. That tells me they don't have a lot of confidence in Anthony Richardson. Maybe they think that bringing another QB will light a fire under him. He'll get into his playbook. He'll go to all the off-season training and things of that nature to improve upon what he needs to work on. Because Anthony Richardson, he's all arm, all power, no touch, no accuracy, and more important, the man can't read defenses. Like you can walk your safety down, and he has no clue what's going on. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. I think he's a terrific athlete, and I certainly think he can help a football team. But if you're saying he's going to play the breadth of his career under center, two things are going to happen. One, you're not going to win anything with him. And two, he's going to have a short career because when he runs, he's a straight line runner. He can't make anybody miss, and he runs upright. He's an easy target. That man is built to have a short career with his running style. Like, remember what happened to RG3? RG3 was really fast, but he was a straight line runner. Anthony Richardson is a bigger target and is a straight line runner. He's not the future of the Colts. He's not.
Say Richardson better move to running back to save his career.
Kurtrell's right. Because we joked about it in the morning show that if he put in enough work, he may become Taysom Hill. May become Taysom Hill. But I just don't think right now, you know what? Kurtrell brought up a great point. Anthony Richardson, to me, is more of a running back with a really strong arm than he is a quarterback.
And, it's almost like a cautionary tale, which is almost perfect because we do have the draft combine coming up that you can have all the intangibles, all the physical traits, but something very important about being a football player is looking the part of a football player. Like, the film really matters. So it's almost a cautionary tale. You're going to see these guys that, oh, look at this guy. He can run a 4.2 40. He can, bench 600 pounds or whatever. But, at the end of the day, you still have to show it on the field at some point. And I think Anthony Richardson's a guy that they drafted solely because of the physical traits.
You bring up a great point, partner. Look, he is a combine baby. If you were talking about how fast he is, his vertical, how many reps he does on the bench press. You know who he is? This will be something for Eagles fans to remember. He's Mike Mamula. He's much faster though. But remember Mike Mamula? Remember he come out of the combines and the Eagles drafted him like, we got this guy. He's gonna be this dominant edge rusher. Mike Mamula, and you know how Eagles fans are. They knew year one they had gotten got. Mike Mamula was garbage. But in them combines, the man put up numbers. Them combine babies, they'll get you. It, like you said, you can look the part of a great athlete. That doesn't mean you're going to be a great football player.
Yeah, my favorite combine baby is still might be John Ross. Like, everyone's like, oh, he's going to be so good. He runs a 4.2. Like, I don't care. Like, what did he show on the football field? Like, not a whole hell of a lot. So it'll be interesting to see, and that's something I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for. Who's going to be it this year? The guy that shows all the athletic traits, but should not go as high as they do.
That's a good one. You know what? Let me ask you a question. Who of the quarterbacks last year? I'm talking about guys like Trevor Lawrence. Who disappointed you the most of the younger quarterbacks that are coming up, like a Trevor Lawrence? Guys in that class, because I look at Trevor Lawrence, I'm not convinced he's a bust. I don't think he's a bust. I don't think nothing about him says bust. And at the same time, I'm not sure anything about him says he's going to be the guy, right? He's good enough, right? If you just judge him on the merits, he's good enough. He can play. He certainly has every attribute you want physically, and yet I don't know that there's that X factor that I don't think Trevor Lawrence has. And I get it, right? Jacksonville, they haven't done the best job in terms of what they've put around him overall. But it's not like he never played with talent, because he did have talent. I just wonder, is he as good as advertised, or did he come out too highly touted?
I think he just came out too highly touted just because, they're talking like, the most safe pick, the, best prospect since, guys like Peyton Manning. Like I said, I don't think that, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a bust. I think bust is a word that gets thrown around too much, right? I think bust should be reserved for guys like Anthony Bennett, for example. From the NBA terms side of things. But I just think that, Trevor Lawrence, he's a guy that everybody had their expectations just sky high. And maybe it turns out that he's a good to maybe even very good quarterback. But the problem is everybody thought that he was going to come out right away and be this almost surefire Hall of Fame elite quarterback. So I just think there's a disconnect between who he is and what the projections were. And, I don't think that makes him a bad quarterback.
No.
But I just think that, it makes him, in a lot of people's eyes, a bust. And I don't think that that's true for Trevor Lawrence.
I agreed. I don't think he's that at all. I'm just wondering if he's ever going to be able to elevate himself into that group, right? There's a group. There's Mahomes, there's Lamar, there's Josh Allen, there's Joe Burrow. There's a smaller group. And I think Jalen Hurts took a step to try to push himself there, but can Trevor Lawrence do it? It escapes me right now. QB for the Chargers.
Herbert.
Everybody loves Herbert, the size, the arm. And yet I feel about Herbert a lot of ways I feel about Sunshine. I feel about him the same way. I know that if you can't win with Jim Harbaugh, who will set you up for success, because Jim Harbaugh is going to run the football. And if you got a strong run game and you're a good quarterback, if you're a good quarterback, never mind great, but if you're a good quarterback and you got a strong run game, your team is going to be a good football team. But if Herbert is a great quarterback, if he's what they talked about when he came out, and you've got that run game and the defense, the only thing is missing is what you can do as a quarterback to elevate the team. So I wondered if Herbert's that guy.
Say, it's funny because it's almost two different things with those two, right? Trevor Lawrence, they never really quite put the team around him. Like, they put together some, they had that 1 year where they ironically beat Herbert and the Chargers in the playoffs, but in general, they just never really put a great team around Trevor Lawrence. Justin Herbert, to me, is a little different because the man went from having great weapons but terrible coaching to now not so much weapons on the outside, but now he has great coaching. And the difference between someone like Herbert and Trevor, to me, is I think Herbert is just put in a much better position to succeed and just hasn't. He has all the physical tools. He puts up these gaudy numbers. But my issue with Justin Herbert is, and what I think is preventing him from that next tier is, okay, well, go win a big game. And I'm not even talking about you have to win a Super Bowl or even come close to a Super Bowl. I think that we're talking about a guy that I watched him get spotted a 28-0 lead almost on the back of a 5-interception performance and 3 by Asante Samuel Jr. by himself. And he couldn't hold the lead against the Jaguars. And I know we can say that, he doesn't have any weapons on the outside. That didn't excuse over half of his picks that he threw against the Texans. I think Trevor Lawrence, to an extent, a reason why he hasn't hit what maybe we thought he could, is because he hasn't been put in a position to necessarily do that. I think that Justin Herbert has been put in a much better position, and he just hasn't. It's almost like one situation, it feels like they're almost a little behind because maybe Justin Herbert hasn't been everything that they've wanted. And Trevor Lawrence, you just look at the team around him, and you're just like, I'm not sure what a lot of people can do with this one, So
let me ask you this. Let's say, hypothetically, you sent Trevor Lawrence to the Chargers and Herbert went to the Jaguars. The Chargers they were a playoff team last year, but let's assume that he could elevate them. What do you think would happen if Herbert went to the Jaguars?
I think he would put up big numbers on a really bad team. I think he would put up some really insane numbers, but I don't think it would move the needle in terms of, all of a sudden the Jaguars are a playoff team because Justin Herbert's there. I don't think that's the case, but he would put up some great numbers.
So is it with the Jaguars, is it the same as the Panthers, right? It starts at the top with ownership, the general manager, not one of the amongst the best in the league, we would agree, right?
Yeah.
And so, because I I hear the line that he's not been set up for success, and I'll give you that, and I agree with that. It's tough. Look, in the NFL, it's tough, especially if you're the quarterback. You have this window where you're in your rookie deal where they can put people around you because they have the money to, and then the moment they pay you, things kind of shift a little bit. It changes because you can't pay everybody.
Say Ridley, Kirk, and Ingram are respectable. No, and that's fair.
No,
but
I'm not arguing.
A big problem with them is they just can't hold on to a football. Even when Trevor throws a lot of great balls, they just drop them. They're respectable, but very inconsistent. And that's kind of just the problem with the weapons around him.
No, I like what Cottrell said. I like Ridley. I like Kirk, Ingram. But I don't think Ridley's a 1. I think Ridley's just a really good 2. I don't think they have a number 1 wide receiver. There was a time when ATN, the running back, was a big part of their offense, but it seems more and more he's being kind of phased out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I kind of find funny. There's another report that we saw, Mo. A certain team has trying to get the tush push banned, and of course, it turns out it's the effing Packers. So I've got to watch everybody clown them. But I do find one thing about this whole tush push discussion interesting, Mo. I understand why you throw it out there because I find it interesting how they let you push guys forward offensively, but there's a strict rule against pushing defensive players forward. In the kind of the same vein, I don't think we need to ban the tush push per se. I don't mind it in all reality. Like, I know some people, mind it, but I think that if you're gonna let the offense push their players forward, to get that extra momentum to gain a yard or two, I think you at least have to let the defense do the same. Give them the same courtesy you give the offense. So I think it's an interesting proposal. I don't think it'll happen. And it's ironic it's coming from the Packers because I think they're one of the better teams at stopping it. But I'm curious, what do you think about this whole tush push ban?
It would be easy for me to say, if you don't like it, stop it. But it's not that easy to stop. You've already got a dominant offensive line. You've got a quarterback who I think with his legs can press 700 pounds. And then behind him is a couple of guys, I think another lineman or two, pushing that quarterback because they are pushing him forward. Look, if you're going to allow the offense to do that, then maybe allow like I said, give the defense the same courtesy. How about this? When the guy's lining up for a field goal, you're not supposed to be allowed to launch yourself off of another player, right? You know how they can get a running start and launch yourself off another. Why not do that? Let the defense do that and see how they like that. Like I don't. I'm not against it per se, but Cottrell brings up a good point. It doesn't seem like it's football because it's an unnatural thing. That's okay that you can let a guy push a guy from, and that's what he's literally pushing him through, right? And I guess the people who love the tush push, obviously Eagles fans will say, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Jalen Hurts will probably still get the touchdown without being pushed. All right, then do the tush push without somebody behind you. Banning it, it's difficult for me. I'm kind of leaning where the Cottrell is. It doesn't feel like a football move. It's weird because we've gotten used to it, but it looks illegal. It looks illegal that you can just push a guy like, and I get it. The argument could be, well, every team could do it, right? But do you want Jordan Love trying to crouch down and get shoved from behind? Because there is a risk of injury. We know that, right? We can agree on that. There's a risk of injury. So my natural instinct is to say it isn't a football play. It doesn't seem like a football play.
So yeah, like I said, I think that the real solution, if you're not going to ban it, at least let the defense push too. Like, if you're not going to ban it, at least even it out. Right. And like I said, I understand that the Eagles practice, just the little things to make it more effective. They, spend hours, it seems, practicing things like, leverage and all the little things that make it successful. But yeah, I would love to see them just kind of, throw out a balancing act and let the defense push back if they're going to let the tush push continue, which nothing wrong with the QB sneak. The tush push is just dumb. LOL. Hey, fair enough. And, another report that we got, Mo. It sounds like Aaron Rodgers wants to go out west. There's rumors that he wants to go to the Los Angeles Rams, which kind of coincides with the other report that the Rams are, giving Matthew Stafford permission to seek a trade. If anybody wonders why, apparently he wants somewhere in the $50 million range on his next contract, which has scared the Rams, I think, into letting him seek a trade because 37, 38-year-old Matthew Stafford at $50 million a year, that's a scary proposition. So, and hey, apparently Rodgers wants to take Davante Adams with him. So I'm curious on what you think about this whole Rams, Rodgers, Stafford kind of little love triangle they got going on over there.
The Rams actually want to keep Stafford, and he wants to be with the Rams. The problem is he's got a number in mind. They've got a number in mind. But him and his agent bring up a very good point. He's like the 16th highest paid quarterback in the NFL, which means that a ton of guys that he's better than make more money than him. And I know he's 36 years old, but he's 36 and still flinging that football at a high level. If you don't want to give him a long-term deal, I get that because he's 36. So give him a 2-year deal. But if you don't, then move on from him. But I totally get why he wants to be paid accordingly. He's not even trying to be weird and reset the market. He's just pointing out that I make less than Geno makes. And it's not like me and Geno are equals. They're not. I totally get it. I'm with him 100%. He's better than a lot of the guys that are being paid more than he is. I think he has value because there's no shortage of teams that want a good quarterback, that need a quarterback. People were talking about Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers. I'd much rather Matthew Stafford go to the Steelers. And if you want to move a wide receiver around, if Pittsburgh's not known for making trades, they really don't do that. But they need a number one. And I know he's not a spring chicken, but maybe they make a move and bring in a Davante Adams because Pickens is not a number one. He's a 2. I just think Aaron Rodgers to the Rams makes sense if Stafford moves on. I totally get that. Although I will say this, as good a coach as Sean McVay is, I don't know how good the team is going to be overall because Stafford has been entrenched in that system so long. It'll be interesting. I guess the good thing is because Aaron's a veteran quarterback, he'll be able to adapt fairly fast. So I think he makes better sense with the Rams than he does with the Steelers to me. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers.
And, last time he was in a, Sean McVay system, obviously that was with Matt LaFleur. He had a rough year at the end, but that was the same system. He also won 2 MVPs in. So it's a system he's shown that he can thrive in. But yeah, no, if I'm the Rams, I'm just trying to find a number with Stafford. And maybe that's why they've given him permission because they know that they're just not going to reach that number. Which is unfortunate. At the end of the day, I was kind of hoping that Matthew Stafford would get to retire a Ram. He's had a great career over there. Just in the grand scheme of things, Matthew Stafford, very underrated quarterback. Before he won the Super Bowl, he was elite, and now here he is trying to get paid, and now they're like they want to move on from him.
Right.
So I hope the best for Stafford, and I think it would be interesting that, if I'm a team desperate for a quarterback, I'm definitely looking to make the call. Now I will say people got to be wary of, the value on the trade market because I find it funny when, people are like, well, the Giants should trade their first round pick for him. And they're like, they're not trading the 3rd overall pick for Matthew Stafford. That's not going to happen. So I'm
No.
curious to see if a Stafford trade does materialize. What does it look like?
I'm with you. And Cottrell pointed out, like they were so close, a couple of plays away from going to the Super Bowl. They were right there, and that's a big part of that is what Matthew Stafford does, how he runs the offense and the throws that he can make late in games. It's funny because earlier in his career, when he was with the Lions all those years, I always looked at him as one of those guys that we were talking about early, puts up big gaudy numbers on a really bad team. And then when he got his first opportunity to play with a team that had talent on both sides of the football, you recognize that he had been an elite quarterback all that time. I readily admit I was one of those people that thought he was overrated. And then I've seen everything he's done since he's been with the Rams. No, he's not overrated. Matthew Stafford is an amazing quarterback. He's an elite quarterback, in my opinion. And the Rams, if I'm the Rams, I'm doing everything in my power. I know they're giving him permission to talk to other football teams, but I know another team that gave a guy permission to talk to other football teams, and that didn't work out so well. He ended up going to the Eagles and winning the Super Bowl. I'm just saying, you don't want to end up in the Saquon box if you let Matthew Stafford go, because that kind of quarterback's not easy to replace unless you can end up getting an Aaron Rodgers. And even right now today, I think today Stafford's a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. Not a greater quarterback, but I'm talking about if you're talking about what they are today as a football player, I think Matthew Stafford's a better football player.
And I think that's an absolutely fair assessment. Because I still think Matthew Stafford. I think he's a top 6 quarterback in the league. I think he's actually right at 6 for me. And I think Aaron Rodgers. I think he's somewhere like in that 10 to 12 range. I think he's in the back end of like the top 10 if you do have him in there. Otherwise, I think like 11th or 12th is close enough. So I think in 2025, I definitely think that Stafford's the better quarterback. And I'm be interested. I'm be interested to see what happens there. Should be a lot of teams looking to get a Matthew Stafford. Just fantastic talent overall.
Brett, what do you think the value is of Kirk Cousins?
I'm
only putting that out there because obviously there's no shortage of teams that need a quarterback. What's his value?
I don't know if he has much. Like, literally, I think Kirk Cousins might be a guy that you'd only have to give up like a really late round pick for. Like, the Falcons would almost have to consider taking like a 5th, 6th, or like a 7th round pick for him. I think the problem with Kirk is kind of a mixture of age, contract, and injury. You combine all those things, I think that you could probably have him for like a 6th or 7th round pick. I don't think it would take that much to get Kirk away from Atlanta at this point.
I think Cottrell's right. I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
I don't think so. I don't think that he becomes a Brown just because. Do you really want to pay Deshaun Watson and then you're paying Kirk big money? And then if you want to bring in another quarterback to compete, you're going to end up paying 3 quarterbacks, 2 of which might not even be starting, like $100 million or something insane like that. Because Deshaun's cap hit this year is absolutely wild.
No, but I think Cottrell brings up a good point. There's a good chance that he gets cut, and you get the Russell Wilson treatment. You get cut. I don't bring you in on a big deal. I give you the deal that the Steelers gave Russell Wilson. Like, you're at the lowest point of your career, bro. Like, I was talking about his value in terms of not in a trade, but what a team would see in him if they brought him in. Did they see starter? Did they see bridge quarterback? Did they see? Do you know what I mean? I meant from that standpoint.
I thought you meant like a trade. Okay, yeah, bridge quarterback. I think he can be a bridge quarterback for a team, but that's about it for him. But yeah, we just got a report that the Giants are prioritizing Stafford. Hey, Stafford Neighbors would be a lot of fun. So, and they'd be willing to pay him.
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
And they wouldn't be forced to, jump into this year's quarterback class if they don't want to. So I could see that benefiting them. But Mo, our 1 hour is up. It's time for us to get up on out of here. Any last words you wanted to say, sir?
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Appreciate everybody up in the trap. Appreciate you, Cottrell. Make sure you check out all the great content we have at Wire to Wire Network. Wire to Wire Network. We appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for joining us this morning. Catch Mo and I tomorrow. We're going to be doing a special episode of the And One podcast, a watch along to Bucks Denver 6:30. It's going to be an absolutely fun time. But until then, we thank you and we hope that everybody here has a great night.